Welcome into the Shopfix channel, a community joined together for the love of woodworking. My name is William Andrew, and I got a great show for y'all today.
I'm going to show you the full process of using a planer sled. I really hope you enjoy this video, and if you haven't subscribed to the Shopfix channel, consider subscribing today. Shopfix, it's for the love of woodworking. Well, like many of my projects, this one began by flattening some lumber. Now I'll be using some walnut boards for this project, and they're too wide to fit on my joiner. I have a benchtop model and they won't fit on there, so I'm gonna have to use the planer sled that I built. I think using a planer sled like this is an incredible way to mill up lumber in a budget-friendly wood shop like mine, where I'm using benchtop planers, and I can get an accurate milling process without large capacity machines, and so I wanted to feature it in this video. So once you have the board crosscut to the final length to fit on the planer sled, you can go ahead and wedge that board on the planer sled if you have a stop block at the front and the back of the sled, which is the preferred method in my opinion. Once the board that's sitting on top of the sled has been properly wedged in place, I can take some F-style clamps and clamp the areas of the board in which are resting flat on the planer sled. Regardless of the planer sled that you'll be using to flatten lumber, if this is a method that you want to try, you'll definitely want to clamp down the spots of the board that are resting flat on whatever material that you're using for your planer sled. As you'll notice, my planer sled has several bolts at the bottom to raise dowel wedges to fill the gaps when milling lumber with this planer sled. However, you can easily get this accomplished by simply using wooden shims underneath your board wherever there's a gap. A planer sled works by giving a flat reference point to the board that you're milling up, and then if there's any gaps between the material of the planer sled and the board, all you have to do is wedge that and you're all set to go. Once you've properly wedged the board underneath with either dowel wedges like my custom planer sled or simple wooden shims, you can finally remove those clamps and you can go ahead and plane that board. The first step of this process before we can plane the board, however, is finding the highest spot on the board. Once you've lowered the planer's cutter head to the highest point of the board you're about to mill up on the planer sled, you can go ahead and take your first pass. On this first pass, I recommend taking no more than a 16th off the board, and I actually would set it up to where you're thinking you're going to be taking off about a 32nd, because that highest point of the board could be a little bit higher than you intended to, so you definitely don't want to overcompensate in case that highest spot is a little higher than you anticipated. If you're interested in the custom designed planer sled that I'm using in this video, I'll leave a link in the description below for the free plans as well as the build video. Essentially at this point, you'll need to just keep making additional passes by lowering that cutter head a turn, which is about a 32nd to a 16th of an inch, and keep making passes until you have a smooth flat board. Now, the planer sled is one of the only methods that I have in the wood shop to flatten such wide boards. There are certainly other ways to flatten lumber, and some that are much quicker. However, this is the one that works best for my wood shop. Now, regardless of what method that you use, the goal of that step was to get one side of the board completely flat so we can flip that board over and send the other side to the planer. Now in this next step, we're going to flip that board over and use that flat reference side to get the other side flattened with our thickness planer, and we're going to set our turret stop to 3/4 to get a uniform thickness. The goal of this step is certainly to get the other side completely flat. However, the other goal is to create a uniform thickness on all the boards that we're going to be using to create the tabletop so they line up appropriately during the glue up. It amazes me every time that simply by planing the board, these rough sawn walnut boards come out looking amazing.
Now with the 3 boards that'll make up the top of this walnut desk, I didn't mill down to 3/4. I wanted to retain as much lumber as possible, and that's something that you'll want to keep in mind if you're making a live edge desk or table, is that you don't want to mill lumber down to 3/4. You want to just mill it down to where they're all flat and uniform thickness, and that doesn't necessarily mean they need to go down to 3/4. So those are a few things you can think about for your project, but other than that, you're all set. So I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you found this content valuable, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to the Shopfix channel. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.
If you have any questions about the milling process that was shown in this video, comment below.